Good day! How are you doing? I hope you're doing great. Welcome to the 21st Century Literature from the Philippines and the World class, Module 5 of Quarter 1. I am Ma'am Catleah Zamora, your teacher for today. Assessing my literary work, Quarter 1, Module 5. Before we start, make sure that you have with you your module, pen, and paper. Most essential learning competency. Our lesson for today will gear you to do self under peer assessment of the creative adaptation of a literary text based on rationalized criteria prior to presentation. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to 1. Produce a creative representation of a literary text by applying multimedia skills. Second, assess self in peer creative adaptation of literary text based on rationalized criteria prior to presentation. Let us try. Now, let us begin with our lesson. As we start, let us do Task 1, entitled Make It My Own. Answer this question and write it on your paper. What are the things you need to consider in assessing literary piece? Make your own rubrics at a scale of 1 to 4 with 3 criteria on how to assess a piece. Fill in the table on the next slide. Using the template, make your own rubrics at a scale of 1 to 4 with 3 criteria on how to assess a piece. This time, you are going to do Task 2, entitled Search for Me. Using the crossword puzzle, look for the words you need to consider in writing fiction. Let us check your answers for Task 2, Search for Me. The following are the answers. Middle, setting, resolution, plot, point of view, conflict, conventions, character, theme, and lastly, tone. Let us study. On your paper, write your answer for this question. What makes a good fiction story? Write down the 3 words you can describe about fiction.
Before we begin, it is important to understand the steps on writing fiction and nonfiction stories. The following are the steps on how to write a fiction and nonfiction stories. Step number 1, find your key emotion. Step 2, start with a hook. Step 3, write the story. Step 4, write a strong ending. Step 5, reread your story. Step 6, edit yourself. And lastly, Step 7, ask others for editing help.
The Guidelines of Good Poetry by Donovan 2018. It is always important to note that some of the best art breaks the rules of conventional wisdom. For every piece of writing advice, there is an example of written works that defied convention and succeeded. But guidelines are not rules. They are guides, meaning they are designed to help you find your way. The first guideline of good poetry is rhythm and meter. This can be achieved through the sounds of the letters, number of syllables in the words, which syllables are stressed, and the length of the lines. Second is word choice. Choosing the right word can mean the difference between a poem that soars and a poem that crashes. Words are to the poet what colors are to the painter, what clay is to the sculptor, and what the instrument is to the musician. Words matter, so choose them wisely. Vivid images is the third guideline in good poetry. Images show readers what's happening rather than telling them. We don't want to hear that the old man was sad. We want to see him struggling to hold back a sob and blinking away the tears in his eyes. The fourth guideline is economy of language. Language that is concise is more memorable and resonates more deeply than verbiage, which tends to feel messy. In most cases, if you can express something clearly and fully in 100 words, you shouldn't use 1,000. Emotional and intellectual quality is the fifth guideline of good poetry. Most readers want to have an experience, and they want to engage with the poem on an intellectual and emotional level. Better yet, give readers poetry that resonates on both levels. Make them think and make them feel. Number 6 is engage the imagination. Letting them use their imaginations makes a poem more personal, more immersive, and more enjoyable. If everything is laid out in so much detail that nothing is left to the imagination, then it will be very difficult for readers to participate in the poem. And remember, readers come to the page for an experience. Read all the poetry. The more poetry you read, the better your own poetry will become. Imagine a musician who doesn't listen to music. Poets should take in poetry, know the canon, and understand their personal tastes and how to tell a good poem from a great one. Let us now proceed to task 3, called Read-valuate. Using the guidelines presented to you, try to assess these excerpts from Ricardo M. de Ongria's 2 poems in 2012, written for the Agnes Locsin Dance, a love story, in honor of Carmen de Locsin in 2012. Refer to pages 8 to 9 of your modules to read the poem. You are done reading the poem. Answer the following questions. Write your answer on your paper. Question number 1. How do you find the rhythm and meter of the poem? Number 2. What are the words that struck you most? Are these words appropriate? Why do you say so? Question number 3. Are there images you find? What are these images? Number 4. What have you imagined while reading the poem? And lastly, question number 5. Can you say that Andrea had written a good poem? How? Are you done with task 3? Good. Now, let us proceed to task 4. I go blogging. Go to pages 10 to 11 of your module to read a story. Make a blog on your Facebook account about your insights and thoughts on the story Collateral Damage. Allow your FB friends to post their assessment of your blog through comment box. On your FB account, write this note before your blog. Let us practice. Now, You are about to do Task 5 entitled Drop of Ink. Are you ready? Write your own poem in your own dialect. Remember to follow the guidelines presented by Donovan. After writing your poem, translate your poem in English. On the left box, write your poem in own dialect. On the right, the poem translated to English. Let us proceed to Task 6, Self-Evaluation. Assess your own poem using this rubric. Your poem will be graded according to this rubric. Title of the poem, follow poetry directions, creativity, conventions, and lastly, handwriting. This time, you are going to perform Task 7, Poet on Net. Post a 14-line poem on your FB account. Ask a friend to assess your poem using the poem rubric and to make a translation of your poem. Present your poem, your friend's translation, and the rating through a PowerPoint presentation. Presentation should be at most 10 slide decks only. Submit the soft file in your FB group authorized by your teacher. As we are about to wrap up our lesson, let us remember that there are 6 elements in assessing fiction and nonfiction. Speaker, imagery, rhyme and rhythm, tone, theme, and symbol. Also, remember that there are 7 elements to be considered in assessing poem. Rhythm and meter, word choice, vivid images, emotional and intellectual quality. Read all the poetry, engage the imagination, and economy of language. We are now on Task 8, Reminiscing the Past. Number 1. Recall a very significant event that happened to you recently. Write a masterpiece using a genre in the 21st century. Just choose one from the following. A. Flash fiction. B. Testimonial. C. Blog. D. Photographic essay. 2. Find a partner and come up with a rubric. You will be assessing each other's work using the rubric made. Remember, you are the one who will make the criteria and scale of your rubric. This is the template to be used in making your rubric. Let us enhance. This time, you are going to do Task 9 entitled, I Make, You Rate. Make an audiovisual presentation of all your outputs for the first quarter. Share your output to your social media platform assigned by your teacher. Ask your friends to rate your work with a scale of 1 to 10. Let us reflect. We are now on the last task for this module. Task 10, Photoshare. Go around your community and notice how people relate with one another. How do these people build relationships? Capture pictures of your subject and be able to present your output to your friends in your community. You can write based on your own standards. Others may find your work commendable, or others may find it not worthy of appreciation. Each one has his or her own criteria in evaluating and assessing artwork. But no matter what, continue writing and capturing life, the subject of literature. That's all for today. I hope you have learned something from our lesson. Once again, I am teacher Catleah Zamora, and see you on our next virtual class.